My name is Kate, and I am in week 21 of my long COVID journey. Since we last spoke, I've had an update in my diagnosis, so wanted to check in and just explain a little bit because it might help someone else. So the week after my last post, I had my intake appointment with the Dartmouth-Hitchcock Long COVID Clinic with Christina Martin, who is one of the co-directors there, and she was absolutely wonderful. And we talked for about an hour and a half. She sat down with me and my spouse and just listened to everything that had been going on. And at the end of it, she said, "I'm pretty sure I know kind of the mechanism of what's going on for you, because it's the same as it is for so many of the people that we're seeing. But I want you to see the cardiologist and we'll go from there." So I got my Holter monitor, my portable echocardiogram put on for basically the duration of Holy Week. I'm an Episcopal priest, so that was interesting. And when I got those results back, the cardiologist said, "You have tachycardia, real bad." So basically my heart rate didn't get below 80 when I was sleeping, and then it was above 100 beats per minute whenever I was out of bed during the day. So my official diagnosis, more specific than long COVID, sort of the mechanism of my long COVID, is post-acute sequelae of SARS-CoV-2 dysautonomia with tachycardia and respiratory muscle weakness. And if you have no idea what that means, neither did I, and I had to do so much Googling. But essentially, okay, so it's post-acute sequelae of SARS-CoV-2, so long COVID, dysautonomia. So it's a dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system is the part of your body, the part of your nervous system that does all of the automatic things we don't even think about, like breathing or your heart beating or your body temperature or digestion, just the things that happen without us having to say, okay, I have to remind my heart to beat. And dysautonomia is when those processes get thrown off. So, and again, big caveat, I am a patient, not a doctor. So I could be, any errors are my own, and my own lack of understanding. But the way I understood it is for some people with COVID, when the virus enters their body, it can attack the vagus nerve, which is a big part of your autonomic nervous system. And for me, it entirely threw off my heart rate. So it caused the tachycardia, the big bump in heart rate, and also my respiratory muscle weakness. So my diaphragm's sort of lack of responsiveness, its inability to relax enough to let air into my lungs, that I've been in pulmonary rehab for since, oh gosh, I think I'm on week 12 of pulmonary rehab now. So what now? How do we treat it? So for me, I have been incredibly fortunate in that my form of tachycardia has responded really well to beta blockers. One, there is no, our ultrasound, my scans showed that there was no additional muscular damage to my heart, so that's huge. But that my heart rate has slowed considerably under the wonderful care of Metaprolol. So I take it twice a day, 37.5 milligrams. We're kind of adjusting and tweaking that as I find the amount that works well for me. I also have a somewhat regular blood pressure as part of my long COVID, so we have to be really careful to keep my heart rate low, but not let my blood pressure get so low that I faint. So the beta blockers have been such a game changer, just in getting my heart rate low enough for me to actually get deep sleep and get rest. It was really just life-changing to be able to get a full night's sleep. I feel more like myself than I have in 2022, so that's huge. Other treatments for dysautonomia, and there's many kinds of dysautonomia. If you've heard of dysautonomia before, you may have heard of POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or vasovagal syncope. But if you're like me, you had never heard of dysautonomia before. So PASC, post-acute sequelae of SARS-CoV-2 dysautonomia, is similar to other forms of dysautonomia, but is unique in that it is post-viral, specifically around long COVID. And the way you treat it, thankfully, is similar to the ways you treat other forms of dysautonomia. So we've been treating dysautonomia for about 3 decades now. So I'm really benefiting from many, many patients and research teams and physicians who have gone before. So in addition to beta blockers, things that help with dysautonomia are really upping your fluid intake and also your salt. So I am supposed to drink between 3 and 4 liters of fluids a day and take in between 4 and 6 grams of salt. If that sounds like a lot of salt, it is. So I take my salts, eating that much in your diet, even if you eat classic American processed food, that's a lot of salt. So I take it in pills through a supplement called potassium that also has some electrolytes in it. I've found it easier to digest than just straight up table salt. So taking in salt, taking in fluids, and the goal of that is to help sort of swell blood volume, because I guess part of the issue with dysautonomia is that oftentimes your blood volume is low, and that means that your heart has to work even harder. Also, compression stockings. And if your first image of compression stockings are like real tight pantyhose that your grandma wore, yeah, that's pretty much what's medically available. But thankfully, because I don't have many occasions to wear pantyhose, nor do I find them particularly comfortable or user-friendly. Thankfully, compression stockings, compression tights have become a big part of the ultramarathon and triathlete community. So you can get pretty much medical grade compression tights from companies like 2XU or CEP compression that are 20 to 30 milligrams of mercury of compression, which is kind of what you're looking for. And it's graduated compression. So it starts extra squeezy at the bottom and sort of like decreases on your way up. So it just like tries to squish the blood and fluids back up your legs, because when I stand, all the blood likes to just hang out in my legs and not go back to my heart, which is another reason that my heart has to work really hard. If this sounds like a lot, it is. It has been really overwhelming. I think in part for me, because I was really hoping in going to the long COVID clinic, I have to be honest, in going to the long COVID clinic, even though, of course, we're all just figuring this out, what long COVID is. We're only 2 years into this. I somehow hoped that there would be the one thing and I would be better. I would be back to my regular life and I would be working full time and I would be dancing again and taking walks with Murphy and my spouse, Zach. That I would have my old sort of wit and sense of humor and be able to tell stories the way I used to. And that hasn't been the case. It has been a huge improvement with the lifestyle adjustments and with the beta blockers, but this is a condition that you manage, not one typically that you cure. There are people, it seems like from the studies I've read, about 50% of people after 2 to 5 years are recovered or almost recovered, and that would be amazing. But that's still 2 to 5 years. That feels like a really long way away. So I'm figuring out the new normal. Part of this is continuing in pulmonary rehab to strengthen my respiratory muscles, and also starting a dysautonomia specific rehab that's really working on upping my cardiovascular skill set while in a reclined or seated position to kind of get me started moving without triggering my symptoms the way they are when I stand. So have started with that. There's a long COVID support group as part of that PT program, which I'm really grateful for, and just to meet other people who are in the same boat. We joke that it's the best, worst club. It's something that nobody willingly signs up for, but it's good to be together. So figuring out the new normal. When I am not doing PT or rehab, when I am not doing my one service in person on Sunday that I'm able to do again, which is really exciting, I am resting. I'm still in bed most of the time, but whenever I start to feel discouraged, and I think feeling discouraged is pretty normal. Life has changed a whole heck of a lot in the last 21 weeks, and there has been a lot of loss. And whenever that starts to feel overwhelming or too deep to get out of, I just try to remind myself of how far I have come already, that the last time I tried to go back to work in person, I basically fell into bed for 3 days and had to, entirely start at the ground level because it just messed my heart rate up so much. And now I'm able to do one service a week. And yeah, I rest for the rest of Sunday and Monday, but I get to do what I love. And I am surrounded and blessed by really good people. So my hope and my prayer for you in your COVID journey or wherever you are is that you are on the road to healing, and that you are surrounded, whether by the people in your life or the folks you meet in the long COVID community on the internet, surrounded by love, just knowing that we're in this together, that you're not alone, and we move forward, whatever that looks like. So take good care, everybody.